So do you believe that now this is where computer vision goes kind of beyond the realm of autonomous vehicles. What about computer vision in, say, the domestic home robot? Does that make you uncomfortable at all? Tell us how, because when we think of seeing,
Yeah.
we think of understanding in a way where, for example, if we're looking at a scene, we could be invading someone's privacy. Explain how computer vision in an automated system isn't seeing the same way that we are in terms of how it's interpreting things. You've got the visuals coming in, but what are some techniques that computer vision companies use to take that data that's coming in and interpret it in a way that we should be comfortable with and happy with?
Yeah, sure. Well, and that spans a spectrum. Okay. You have companies all along the spectrum of how they process and interpret video signals and computer vision. Certainly you can have, so what the camera quote sees, you need to interpret that or have the context of what is seen. You're taking a 3D world and you're squishing it to a 2D plane, a set of pixels, rows and columns of dots, basically. You've got to have a computer that looks at that and interprets what it's seeing. And so an example I'll give you is that if your AI is tuned to look for something in particular, so, and I'm going to give you the example of a physical threat, maybe something like smoke or fire. I can feed that AI, that interpreter, if you will, that video stream, and it will come to certain conclusions based on how it was trained, based on its knowledge set, based on what it is looking for. A different AI, maybe I just go throw, Chat GPT or Claude or one of the generic ones at it, looking at that same scene comes to a completely different conclusion because it's been trained differently. It's looking for other things. Now, you or I don't necessarily know what the company behind any given system might have trained their computer vision on. And that's something where I always recommend if you don't know, you need to ask. Go ask that company, hey, are you doing, for example, facial recognition? There are companies that do facial recognition. There are many companies that do not and do not do that intentionally. They don't want the legal complications that go with doing something like facial recognition. They can tell you, oh, it was a person with the red shirt and blue pants, but they don't know who that person is. They don't know if it was Dave. They don't know if it was Ken. And then there are other companies that do that facial recognition. Oh, we recognize all those pixels represent Ken, and that was Ken, or those represent Dave, and that was Dave. So again, it's across the spectrum of how those interpretations are done.
So in a vehicle doesn't need to do at least
It's not
what
going to
are
recognize Dave. It's just going to
right.
recognize it's a person.
It's a
Or
person or it's a dog. Yeah, I assume animal, it's low to the ground, some category of animal. It's almost like the 20 questions is it bigger than a bread box.
yeah.
And
Now,
so now,
Dave.
now I have seen demos of
Okay.
computer vision systems that are surveying public spaces, and
Yes.
they will look for things like signs of distress, where they can interpret certain movements to mean that an individual is in distress. Someone stumbles and falls to the ground, as an example. Two people in a physical conflict, it can sense. But again, it's about what you tell the computer to look for. It's not that it's gathering all information and automatically interpreting it in a ubiquitous way. Not yet.
Not yet. Those things are getting
So
better. The more you train them, the more they see, the more those systems understand. And you just gave the example there of maybe people fighting. Okay, I can tell you from looking at a lot of analysis of those interpretations that the state of AI today is it does not know if Dave and I are just pushing, shoving because we're buddies and we're going to kind of push and shove each other. We like each other and we're just roughhousing, or if I'm really ticked off at Dave and I'm getting ready to clock him. I've had conversations with AI engineers and I said, well, why don't you look at the mass of the individuals and look at the acceleration rate of the arms? And they're like, whoa, do you realize how much computational power it would take to do that? I said, well, you could better determine whether they're roughhousing or really fighting, and what's the velocity of the person kicking back. Because it can't really be done today with the processing power that's brought to bear today, that doesn't mean that in a year from now or 2 years from now that we won't have that kind of process. to bring to bear and to understand it's just Dave and I roughhousing, and we don't need to alert the security personnel, or no, Dave and I are in a knockdown, drag out fight, and security better get there right away. So those types of interpretations, understanding the context is key. And the way you get there is not only your processing power, but your historical learning. The more camera streams you have watching those scenarios and learning from those interactions of those individuals, the better that gets over time.